first, Canadians are paying way too much tax. I mean, more than 40% of the average Canadian family's budget is going to taxes. More than 40%. I mean, look, the average Canadian family is now spending more on taxes than what they're spending on food, housing, and clothing combined. Gross. But not only is this crushing tax burden making life more expensive, it's also hurting our economy, right? Canada ranks 27th, a dismal 27th out of 38 industrial countries on income tax competitiveness. Canada ranks a dismal 22nd on business tax competitiveness. Both measures, we are falling behind the United States because governments are wasting, spending, and taxing way too much.
There you have it, guys. Things are going to get more expensive in Canada. Today is Wednesday, January 7th. Merry Christmas to any Orthodox Christian viewers that I have on my channel. Wishing everybody a Merry Christmas. And so what we see here is we have three stories that dropped in the same week. And together they tell an uncomfortable truth, guys. We're not acting as a sovereign country. Canada is behaving like an accessory to decisions made somewhere else by people who no longer control outcomes. Because none of these people outside of Trump actually control outcomes. We have a sitting Canadian MP who is now advising a foreign wartime government. Our Prime Minister is flying to Paris to join a coalition that cannot end the war it claims to manage. And Western leaders are openly criticizing the United States while quietly admitting they can't act without it. Guys, this isn't diplomacy. All this is exposure. It's just exposure. Everybody's being exposed, and that's why I really wanted to delve into this. And I'm gonna read a bit about a bit into this article right here. And then I'm going to get into my quick analysis. We go, Canada and its allies must send a strong signal to the United States from a Paris summit on Ukraine. This week that they do not support President Donald Trump's flouting of international law through a military strike on Venezuela that seized its leader, foreign policy experts say. First of all, what the hell does Ukraine have to do with Venezuela? What do they have to do with each other? They have nothing to do with each other. But they're going to go on a summit regarding Ukraine, and they're going to give a firm response altogether. The coalition of the willing, who can't do shit, mind you. They're going to give a strong response to Trump around Venezuela. And that's why I call them the coalition of the irrelevant, because that's exactly what they are. All of those leaders, they're irrelevant in the wider geopolitical game that's going on. French President Emmanuel Macron, on Tuesday is gathering leaders of European countries as well as Britain and Canada in Paris, where allies are expected to make firm commitments on protecting Ukraine once a peace deal with Russia is achieved. Western countries have repeatedly described Moscow's invasion of Ukraine as illegal under international law, the same charges being levied against Mr. Trump after he attacked Venezuela and ousted President Nicolas Maduro. First of all, this whole paragraph needs to be broken down a little bit. It needs to be broken down a little bit, guys. First of all, Emmanuel has been, in France in general, have been continually acting as colonial powers in Africa, completely just ruining their former colonies and just driving them into deeper debt. So there's no moral high ground from Emmanuel and from France when it comes to anything regarding international law. But the commitments they make in Ukraine, once a peace deal is struck with Russia, first of all, none of these countries are going to be at that signing ceremony. None of their signatures are going to be being ink to paper, being put down on that signing ceremony when some kind of peace is signed between Russia. Because Canada is not going to make that decision. None of those, France, Germany, the UK, nobody in the European Union is going to be a part of that. Because they're completely irrelevant, guys. They have no power. Who's gonna be at the signing ceremony? It's gonna be a direct signing between Russia and the U.S. The Ukraine might not even be involved because the only two countries that are important in this whole thing are the U.S. and Russia, because the UK hasn't sent shit to Ukraine. They've sent some money. They've sent like 20 missiles, Storm Shadow missiles. They sent like 20 tanks, Challenger tanks. Meanwhile, they sent those 20 Challenger tanks, and now they have like 7 in stock. So the UK military doesn't fucking exist anymore, okay? The Germans have completely given more or less the majority of their Leopard tanks. They've all been basically destroyed in Ukraine. In Canada, in what? Canada's giving money so that Ukraine, the most corrupt country in Europe before the war, before the special military operation happened, we're giving them money so that they can be creditworthy with the World Bank and the IMF afterwards. Right. And now, all of these losers, essentially, are getting together to tell Trump, you can't do that. You can't oust Maduro by international law. International law, mind you, which was created by the U.S., the main signatory of that. This whole rules-based order that exists, that we've all been living through. I've been born into the rules-based order. This whole rules-based order is based off of U.S. military might. That's all it's based on. And what's happening now is that everybody's just being exposed, that the U.S. is the big daddy, and honestly, everything is just acting a little more imperial. And we can complain about it, we can be little bitches about it, or we can just accept it as the fact on the ground. Because none of these countries that are going to go and complain about it in Paris can really do anything about it. And so this is what this guy says. So this is a professor from Carleton says it's in their interest to send a firm message to Washington because otherwise it undermines the whole Ukraine strategy and the principles of defending Ukrainian sovereignty. That doesn't make any fucking sense. If we're seen as condoning this, it's giving a hunting license to Putin and quite frankly Xi when it comes to Taiwan, he said, referring to Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping, who has not ruled out using force to annex self-ruled Taiwan. First of all, the U.S. accepts official policy is to accept the one China policy, mind you. The fact that they're de facto not doing it is a completely different situation. But the majority of the world actually accepts the one China policy in which Taiwan is a part of China. This is an actual part of U.S. foreign policy. And I don't know what Canada's official stance is, but I'm sure Canada's is very fucking similar. So, the fact that the U.S. is using Taiwan as a staging ground is a completely different situation. That's the reality on the ground. China wants to change it. This is why, and China's becoming a lot stronger now, and this is why the U.S. is trying to repatriate that microchip technology from it, so that China doesn't have a monopoly on the leading technology that the whole world is currently working from, right? Goes down here, goes, Paris will be a chance for Canada and European allies to send a message to the Americans that this has to stop, said Roland Paris, a professor of international affairs and director of the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at the University of... Like, really? This has to stop. Wow. Because both Canada and the European Union officials on Saturday offered a carefully worded responses to Mr. Trump's carefully worded responses that fell short of condemning the military strike. Professor Paris, who served as foreign policy advisor to then Prime Minister Blackface Justin, said these statements reflected the weakness of their positions right now and the priority they're placing on not undermining their own economic perspectives with the Trump administration. We're going to send carefully worded messages condoning what's going on. And guys, let's get fucking serious once and for all. Let's get serious. I'm going to scroll down here because this is what it comes down to with Canada right here. Brian Clough, who served as deputy chief of staff of Blackface Justin. So I actually agree with this guy. said Canada needs to stow criticism of the United States and focus on upcoming renegotiations of the trilateral USMCA. Canada has wanted Maduro gone for years, so it's good he's gone. Exactly. This isn't how most in the Canadian government would have wanted him to depart, but there's not much use in hyperventilating about it or lecturing the United States. Thank you. Yeah, he's right. He's actually right. Canada should focus on working with the US and other countries to help Venezuela further turn the page on the Maduro regime, helping restore democracy and rebuilding their economy. Canada has one main goal with the US in the upcoming year, and it's to navigate the USMCA. Guys, this is all it's about. Canada needs to renegotiate the USMCA. But what are these three stories really telling us? Let's connect these dots, guys. We have Ukrainian president's appointment of Chrystia Freeland, who's a sitting Canadian parliamentarian and former deputy prime minister, as an economic development advisor to Ukraine. That's not a former official, not a private citizen. It's a current Canadian lawmaker. Second, we have Prime Minister Mark Carney. BlackRock Mark Carney is going to fly to Paris to join this so-called coalition of the willing, or coalition of the irrelevant, pledging more money, more commitments, more rhetoric in support of Ukraine, while offering literally no explanation of what Canada actually controls in this process, or what we what we stand to gain from it. The third thing is this same coalition is now being urged by experts to publicly condemn the United States for acting outside of international law in Venezuela, even as those same countries quite literally depend on Washington economically, militarily, and diplomatically, because without the US, they're quite literally nothing. The EU is literally irrelevant geopolitically, especially after Germany lost cheap energy from Russia. These aren't isolated events, guys. They form a single pattern. Canada is outsourcing judgment, authority, and credibility while pretending it is still independent, pretending it's still an independent decision maker. And so I've really kind of broken my thought process down into like three pressure points. And the first one is how Canada's sovereignty is actively being eroded. So sovereignty this thing doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes through exceptions, overlaps, and silence. And it starts with Chrystia Freeland. A sitting Canadian MP is advising a foreign government engaged in an active war. This is not symbolic. It's structural. Where does her loyalty lie, guys? Where does her loyalty lie when Canadian interests diverge from Ukrainian interests? Who does she brief? Who does she brief? Who does she answer to? She's not going to answer to Canada anymore because she's going to be a Ukrainian advisor. Which hat is she wearing when decisions collide? Honestly, this is a serious question. So in any serious country, this would trigger immediate conflict of interest reviews. At minimum. In other words, it would be prohibited outright. And now let's kind of zoom out, guys. Canada has committed more than $20 billion to Ukraine. And we continue to pledge funds without parliamentary clarity on objectives, endpoints, or leverage. We're founding all of these outcomes and we're not shaping them. To be clear, man, sovereignty means the ability to say no, and Canada we're atrophying. We have muscle atrophy. We're not doing shit. We're not doing shit. The second point I want to touch on is the weakness Trump exposed in Western elites. And this is a big thing because this is exactly what he did. He exposed a major weakness in Western elites. And it's a lot bigger than Ukraine. Donald Trump did not just act unilaterally. He revealed something Western leaders hoped would honestly remain hidden. They have no independent power without the United States. That's end point right there. The coalition of the willing, they can meet, they can issue statements, they can pledge money. It can't end the war. It can't enforce peace. It cannot compel Russia, and it cannot override Washington. Everyone knows this, guys. Ukraine knows it. Russia knows it. China knows it. And obviously Trump knows it. None of these countries in the coalition of the willing will actually ever send boots on the ground in Ukraine to defend it. That's why peace, if it comes, will not be signed in Paris. It will be signed between Washington and Moscow, with Ukraine present somewhere on the side. They're not going to be leading it. The coalition exists. The whole purpose of these four losers in that picture that you're looking at is to maintain that they have some kind of relevance. It's all posturing. It's political theater for domestic audiences. We're gonna protest Donald Trump. Yay. Because the only reason why this works is because all of their constituents are some neoliberal losers. And when Trump removes Maduro without coalition approval or any approval, Western leaders protested. They didn't act. They can't act. They simply can't. So when Trump dictates the tempo of negotiations, allies complain, but they end up following. Why? Because they have to. They simply have to. So this isn't leadership. This is dependency. It's dependency management, guys. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Western elites built this reality themselves. They got too comfortable. They hollowed out their militaries. They outsourced energy security. They turned diplomacy into moral signaling instead of leverage. And they mistook consensus for power. Trump didn't break any system. He walked into an empty room and turned on the lights, basically. And what's the biggest thing here for me is how this is all impacting Canadians, because there's domestic credibility collapse at home, right? And Canadians are being told that foreign policy is principled, it's rule-based, it's values-driven, but credibility comes from consistency. You cannot claim sovereignty while surrendering decision-making. You cannot claim independence while aligning reflexively. You cannot lecture others on law while ignoring conflicts of interest at home. Like Chrystia Freeland, a sitting MP, going into the office of Vladimir Zelensky. When Canadians see elites move freely between domestic office and foreign power centers, trust has to erode. And when money flows out while accountability still stays vague, your legitimacy erodes. And so when decisions are made elsewhere, but they're announced at home, your democracy erodes. Who voted for this shit? No one. No one did. No one asked Canadians, hey, what's the level of support that we should give Ukraine? How much money should we be giving to this country? Have an open debate about it. Have an open debate about it. Why not? Have a referendum about it. Guys, this isn't abstract. It affects public confidence, national cohesion, and long-term stability. Countries do not fail first economically, they fail psychologically. Guys, power matters, borders matter, interests matter. Sovereignty is not a slogan. It is the capacity to decide, to refuse, and to act independently when required. Alliances are tools and not substitutes for statehood, guys. And moral authority without leverage, it's just commentary. And this is all they're doing. It's just political posturing. They just get in front of cameras and they just talk shit for their local constituents, right? That's all they do. Canada is drifting into posture, where it pays, agrees, and applauds, but we don't decide anything. We don't do anything. This isn't leadership. We're in no leadership role, guys. We're in this is managed decline, if you will. To close it off, guys, this is the hard truth for Canadians that I think you guys deserve to hear. The world is reorganizing around power, not preferences. Wars are ending through force and negotiation, not summits and statements. We're seeing this in Ukraine. We're going to see this in other places as well, right? We saw this even earlier before Ukraine. We saw this in the 99 bombing of Serbia as well. We saw it then as well. We saw it in the whole breakup of Yugoslavia as well. We saw it in 100 other places, in wars that shouldn't have happened. Quite literally, in wars that shouldn't have happened around the world, even in the Middle East. So this isn't something new, but it's just being exposed. It's just being exposed now for what it is. And Canada must decide whether it wants to be a sovereign country with interests of its own, or a well-spoken participant in processes it doesn't control. Because when peace is signed without you at the table, and when decisions are made without your consent, and when your leaders serve multiple masters, sovereignty is no longer theoretical. It already slipped. And once it's gone, no statement can bring it back, guys. That's all I have for you guys today. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like Captain Say.